Lohan's plan to defeat the Connector was revealed in this chapter, and it seems as though Niko is going to be working with him. Although, I don't think Niko has much of a choice when it comes to this, because the mere fact that he has heard Lohan's plan means that he kinda has to jump on board unless Lohan will just, well, kill him. Because he now knows the plan, essentially. But with the revelation of Lohan's plan, we get to know a bit more about the Connector and his plan. Or at least part of it. Or maybe from Lohan's perspective. Let me put it like that. But let's not jump too far ahead. I do want to start off with the beginning because there were a lot of interesting parts when it came to this chapter. I think there's a lot of good setup here. It's one of those chapters where, yeah, there's no fighting, but it's definitely setting up for bigger and better things. And so we'll start off with, of course, Jan talking shit to Gilbert, William, and Niko. And my man, Gilbert wasn't getting any rest, bro. Shen Wulong was like, not even Edward Wu would fumble the bag like he did. And I do use fumble the bag deliberately because I don't think they necessarily failed. At least not in the traditional sense. Like, none of them actually died. And they did do way more damage to their opponents than their opponents did to them. At least on paper. Because Gilbert's case might be special because I think he has healing factor. And the reason why I say this, he refers to it as rejuvenation, but we do know he had used it before in the Westwood faction war, and the fact that there was a grenade right at his feet that went off, and he seems relatively fine. Actually, yeah, he seems almost like barely much of anything happened to him. And he does talk about his rejuvenation in this chapter, saying that actually might have made him a lot more sloppy. Now, I know some people are gonna give, of course, Gilbert, William, and Niko a hard time because, of course, they're comparing him to Shen Wulong, the god of the verse. And I think, again, that's a recipe for disaster. But I think that this experience is very important for them because I think this is what pushes them to the next level, especially for Gilbert, because Gilbert, after that whole ordeal with getting chewed out by Jan and even Shen Wulong chiming in saying, hey look, Gilbert, you're a young dude. It is what it is, you just gotta improve. That's all you gotta do, man. Mistakes, they happen. It is what it is. And so that sort of lit a fire under Gilbert and William, and Jan says, well, now it seems like they have like actual resolve to get stronger. And Gilbert says he's aiming for the top. And I did a theory video on the origin of the Wu clan talking about Wu Hei, and Wu Hei coincidentally pops up in this chapter, and at least he's mentioned in this chapter that he was more than likely the strongest in all of the Wu clan's history. So he's basically the god of the Wu clan, essentially. And Gilbert's like, hey, he's not just going to be essentially Edward 2.0, he's going to be Wu Hei 2.0. And I think that's pretty good. I think him going for training and becoming stronger will definitely help him, especially now that we know that also Ryan, a similar thing happened to Ryan where he sort of faced a point in failure where he lost to the Westwood faction basically. And that has led to him going, to some mountain somewhere to train and become much stronger. And so I think we're laying the foundations for huge growth for both Gilbert and Ryan at the same time, I guess. But something else that was interesting was the stuff that was revealed about Aoaya, and I think this is very interesting and might need its own little video, although it's a pretty short topic, so we can cover it in this review. And that is the fact that it seems as though Aoaya can at least somewhat show spikes in strength. And this might be due to him not being mentally stable or something like that, because we do know Setsuna thought that, or at least Aoaya thought that he was sort of getting weaker. But it seems as though that's not completely true. Or if we were to take Aoya's words as true, that he managed to reach his prime strength, at least for certain amounts of time, like a select period of time, he can go into the prime of his strength, you could say. And he did that against William, because William explains that, hey, look, I tried to put this man down, but he just wouldn't go down, and eventually he just got stronger. And this is actually not the first time this has happened. It happened before, but I think most of us swept it under the rug because we didn't really want to believe it. But when Aoaya beat Luohan with that flashlight, bruh, that probably was a huge indication that, wait a minute, something might be going on with Aoaya here. And now I'm just that much more interested in what's going on with Aoaya, because it seems as though he can get into certain states where he either reaches his prime strength or straight up surpasses it. But it's something that at least has been somewhat established before. Which now brings us to, of course, the Lohan's plan to defeat Shen Wulong. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how feasible this plan is, because if he's going to have people guarding him, it'll probably be people like Yan. But even more than that, I think this guarantees, if Lohan's plan is to even come to fruition, Shen Wulong has to essentially win his next Kengan match. That's what all of this depends on, because that's the only way he gets Oma and Ryuki, is by winning the Kengan match. And so Lohan is basically taking that as a given. And yeah, it sort of makes sense why it's a given. So it'll be interesting to see how that ultimately plays out. But what this also does confirm is that there might be a difference in how I thought about the connector, I could say. And that is that I used to think that Lohan was the second connector, but no, he's a clone of Shen Wulong. But then that brings up the question about what Shen Wulong said about Oma not being him, and that Mukaku thought there was more than one connector, you could say. I'll have a video on that very soon, because I have a very interesting theory, because, oh boy, there are two ways that you could see this. But one way makes way more sense, but is way more crazier, you could say. But yeah, that's basically the actual review. Other than like Lohan's plan to take over, I just don't think it's going to happen. I think that somehow, some way, it's going to fail. Whether it's, hey, maybe the Niko stands alright. Niko somehow essentially betrays Lohan in their portrayal of the worm so that he can get some of the memories of the connector. I could see that being what happens, because what's interesting about this plan is that I thought this was the plan that was a long time coming, but there's something wrong with that theory, and that is that Lohan has to tell Niko his plan in this chapter, meaning that this Lohan's plan is something he came up with recently, and that is a very interesting situation, you could say, because I don't know how successful, a plan like that will work out. But yeah, that's the video. Don't forget to like and sub if you like the review, and yeah, until next time, take it easy.